Hello everyone, Andy Hughes here doing a fix-it video, and this fix-it video is my tumble dryer. My tumble dryer, for some reason when you switch it on, the drum doesn't go round. So the power works okay, the heat and everything works okay, it just doesn't spin around. Now this is I was going to say second attempt at this video, but actually it's probably about number 6 now. So originally I didn't think it was the belt because I could tell there was tension on the drum when you spun it round. So I didn't think it was the belt. So when I opened it up and let a look inside, I realised there was a little black plastic wheel that had kind of cracked and broken away. So I took that off and replaced that, and then attempted to put the belt back on around that wheel, and in doing so I ripped the belt and snapped the belt. So I'm now going to fix the tumble dryer, having fixed the wheel, which I'll show you if that's the problem with yours. And now I'm obviously going to have to do the belt as well. So I bought myself a new belt which will go around the drum and everything, so I'm going to show you how to replace that, and I'll show you how I replace the little wheel as well. So the first things first, crucially important, turn the power off, take the plug out so there's no power, and just test it to make sure nothing happens. You don't want to electrocute yourselves. By the way, instant disclaimer, if you want a proper video, go and look at someone who's a professional and knows what they're doing. I'm just doing this because I want to fix this and I don't want to pay somebody to come out and do it for me. So please don't necessarily take my advice. I'm just showing you what I've done, so you can't sue me and all that lot. So tumble dryer, pull the tumble dryer out. If you're like me, working in a utility room, you need to just have enough space to be able to get at it. So I've pulled my cable through enough to be able to leave the plug in the cupboard, because it's a nightmare trying to feed it all back in. So first things first, we need to take off the top here, which is via 2 screws at the back, one at the back here and one at the back over there. So I've taken these off already, so I've taken the screws out already, and I'm putting them in a little pot just to keep them all together. What you will notice as you go through is these 2 screws are different. These are the ones for the top. These are different to pretty much all the other screws. All the other ones seem to be roughly the same screw. So just keep those separate. And then the top just kind of lifts up and over in a kind of arc, because it's held on with a lip under these 2 bits. So if I show you, so I'll just lift that up, give it a wiggle, and I'm just tilting it forward and you see it kind of pops out, and then you can lift that off. Okay, we'll just leave that down there for a minute. Okay, next thing we need to do is take off this side panel. Okay, and this has got 1 screw at the top here, which I've already taken out and put in my little pot, and then both sides, each side has 4 screws down the back along this panel, so you need to take those out as well. So I've taken all of those out bar this last little one, which I've kind of left in loose just to show you. And this is where I need 2 hands. So what I'll do is I'll pause the video and I'll set it on my tripod, and then you'll be able to see. Right, so hopefully now you can see that I'll just take this screw out. Try and take care not to drop it, and then this panel should just kind of, you'll see it starts to come loose. Now it needs to come this way because these bits here at the bottom slide under a kind of hooking bit, so you need to slide it that way and then pull the panel out. So it takes a little bit of jiggling around and then it should come away. So then the panel comes away and you can discard the panel. Now let's see if I can show you this as we go down. Okay, so here you will now be able to see the motor and everything. So what you would see here, you can see these marks that go around the drum. This is where the pulley wheel, the drive belt would have been. So that's the bit that was fine for me, but I ended up snapping it. So I'm going to replace that, and then it's going to sit down on this pulley wheel here, and then also go around this little spindle piece here. In fact, let me see if I can get a little bit more light. Right, so hopefully what you should be able to see now is that metal bar. I'll move this around the other side. That metal bar there, that's the spindle. So the belt, pulley belt, is going to go underneath that, and then it's going to come round and wrap over the top of this pulley wheel, and then reattach to the drum and spin the drum. So the problem I had was this was broken, this wheel, and these are about £8.95 I think it was on Amazon, so they're only cheap, and it comes with the wheel and this little bracket here. And if you, let me see if I can show you that. So what you'll hopefully see there, if I can get some light on that, you'll see there's a couple of sort of bolts kind of that will need like a spanner on them. There's 6mm and there's one this side and one the other side, and all you do is you undo those, take that whole bracket off, and then you swap it for your new one, which comes all as one piece. I think you need to keep the bolts because you need to use those, but the easiest way that I found to do this was to move this bracket upwards out of the way and then try and locate the back screw first, because it's just a little bit more awkward because there's not much space in that in there. And then once you're able to just slightly tighten the back screw, you can then rotate the whole thing round and then try and locate this one. It only goes in one place because there's a metal lug that sits out from the bracket, and you'll see it because it slots into a hole in this metal casing here. So you can only really locate it in one way, but if you try the back screw first and just get that located and then spin it round and do the front one, you'll find it much easier. And then that's pretty much that. So that's easy. So if your belt hasn't broken and that's all that's kind of gone wrong with it, that might seem straightforward, and that's what happened to me. But then trying to get the belt on, there just wasn't enough give in the belt without doing some other things first, and I ended up ripping the belt and snapping the belt anyway. So I bought a new belt. So now I'm going to show you how to replace the belt as well. So to do this, we kind of need to, so let me see if I can show you that. We're going to need to take apart this case here. This is just a plastic case which should just pop off and reveal the rest of the spindle, because the spindle sits in between two bits, so you can't actually get to it here, so you can't put the belt underneath. So you've got to take this case off in order to get access to it. So I'm just going to have a go at doing that, and to do that I'm going to use a flat blade screwdriver. Okay, so I've got the flat blade screwdriver. You can see that. Come on, focus. There we go. So that's my flat bladed, and I'm going to just try and press it into here and just prise this case apart to allow the thing to come up, and then another one on this side, which then hopefully will allow me to just prise that case off. Now what you will have to do is you'll obviously have to take this piece of cabling out of here. Let me see if I can keep some light on this. It's not particularly great, but okay. So what you'll do is if you look over the top of this, look down on it, you'll see there's a plastic thing that's holding the wires kind of in place. So you just need to work them free, taking care not to pull on them too hard, otherwise you might pull something out of a connector. Okay, so then that will come sort of free, and then this should, he says, should kind of come free. Right, okay. So my little circuit board bit here is sitting on top. So there we go. Oh, again, it just takes a bit of fiddling. And actually that might be stuck, so it might be that I've actually got to take off this plastic thing here that's holding the circuit boards and everything. So I'll take a quick look at that and see if I can take that off. If I can, then I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so I'm pretty sure this piece needs to come off. Now I'm going to try and take it off without disconnecting any wires and stuff. So the way I've had a look around it, and the way I think it needs to come off is this bit, which is the front condenser. If you've got one of these, kind of comes down. In fact, you might not have this on your machine because a lot of them don't for some reason. A lot of the videos I watched don't have it on. So what you will see there is you will see there's like an Allen screw, one at the bottom, one at the top, and they need to come off. So I'm going to take those off and see whether that sort of allows me to release this whole kind of section here. And hopefully it will. So I'll take those off and then I'll show you. Right, so yeah, so I've taken those two screws out, and what you will see now is that's effectively loose. So the only thing it's now held in place with is the wire looms. So you've got a wire loom here, and then if I just shove the video up a bit, you've got a wire loom here. Now you can, these are only held in with like plastic clips. Now you might not have this on your machine. Chances are you probably won't, because all the videos I've looked at don't seem to have it. But if you have, that's the way to kind of release it a little bit so you've got a little bit more movement. Now one of the things that I will say is you will need, in order to get the belt in place, you're actually going to need to, let me see if I can show you this a little bit clearer. So we're actually going to need to we're going to need to remove this front piece here, because the belt is going to need to feed down in between the drum and this. So we need to not take this off completely, but we need to be able to loosen it all off so that we disconnect it from the back and allow this bit to just move forward enough to get the belt in and down there. And again, this is only a case of removing some screws and then kind of when we put it back together, aligning some things. But I'll make a little bit of a start on that and see if I can turn the light on. Does that make any difference? Not much. So I'll show you the kind of things. So I'll take this off the tripod for a minute just so I can show you close up. Alright, so first things first, we're going to have to remove these two screws which secure this bar to here. And we'll probably need to disconnect these wires So what I would do with your phone or whatever, just take a photo of where the wires go, so that you know when you put it back together again, you're putting them in the right place. What you should always know is that any that touch the metal casing of anything are earth wires. They're grounding the electrics to earth, so they will usually always be yellow and green kind of wires, so you can pretty much guarantee they'll connect on there. But for the moment I'm just going to disconnect this bar here, and then I'm going to also take the other side panel off, which I haven't taken off yet. And again, it's exactly the same. There's a screw there and then 4 screws that run down the back. So I'll do that and then I'll show you where I'm up to. Okay, so we've got so I managed to take this bar off here. And what I've done temporarily for the moment is I've just actually taken the hole with 2 screws at the back. I've just taken the whole of this block and loosened it, because that may give me, I suspect, enough room just to wiggle it so I don't have to disconnect all, because I tried taking these off and they were quite tough, and the more I wiggled them, the looser they start to get, and because these are earths, I want to keep a nice connection, so I figured it was just as easy to take this block off. What I'm also going to have to do now is, if you've got a condenser machine, you'll have one of these probably pots and that at the top. First of all, take out your water pot. Just wiggle that. Yep. So get rid of your water part. And then the kind of next bit will be that you will then need to just hear the leftover of the water kind of dripping out. Right, so the next thing we'll need to do is we'll need to remove or loosen this kind of bit here. Now the good thing is, if I turn that around, I can't, it won't stretch. What you will hopefully see is, if I can get it in there, you will see there is a black and white hose that needs to be, in fact, can I get that in there? Let's see if I can get that in there. Yes, there's a black and white hose that needs to be disconnected. Remember which way round they go, because that's quite important. One of them's cold and one of them's hot condensing. And then there will be these 2 screws. There's one this side and then one the other side. And all you do is take those off, and it will loosen this and allow it to come out from the main machine. So let me see if I can put that back. There you go, and what you'll see now is that comes free. So we're starting to see now, if I move this a little bit, you can start to see now that the actual dryer now has come forward. So we've got this gap, and this is what we're trying to create. There's one last kind of couple of things I need to do, which is that lint collector down the bottom there, you can see, with the hole and the grooves. I need to just take that out and drop that inside the machine, and then I should hopefully have enough room to be able to get access to the front of the drum to get the belt back and around it. So now that I've loosened this and got this out of the way, this now should just be able to drop down. There we go. And this releases your fan, and then we need to take this fan off so that we can get access to this spindle that you see kind of here. So in order to get the fan off, there is a little spring clip which we'll need the pliers to pinch it together and pull it, and then that will allow us to take this fan case off. Now the only thing I'm not so sure about is this thing here, because on all the ones I've seen, okay, well that was easy. So that literally dropped into a groove in the machine like that, and that was it. So that comes out. I mean, the amount of dust and stuff that gathers in these things is crazy. Right, so the good thing is I've got I thought I had a nice big hole at the front of the machine to work then. So all we do is grab, I don't know whether you can see that in there, I wonder whether you can, but hopefully, I don't know whether you can see it, you'll see at some point there is a spring clip in there. Can I get closer? You can see where my pliers are. You can see there's a spring clip. Now all we're going to do is pinch that together and pull it off so that it comes free. So as we wiggle it, so I definitely will need 2 hands for this. So as we wiggle it, we should then be able to pull it. So I'll use both my hands, otherwise you'll get motion sickness from a very dodgy video. Right. Right, there we go, there we go, there we go. There we go, perfect. Right, now the trick is not to drop that. So that's all the clip is, and all you're doing is you are squeezing those 2 bits together, and it releases the tension on the clip and allows you to pull it off. So again, keep that with your screws, keep it nice and safe. Now this should come free. Now as you can see there, it's not moving, so you might need to just give it a little bit of a tap. There you go, and that will come free. So that's your fan. Right, so I've given it a bit of a clean out. Let me see if I can show you the kind of next bit that I want to kind of do. Right. So what you can see there is you can see that there is now a gap. I'll get it around there. You can see now that there's a gap around the drum. What I need to do is get the gap so that it's down here as well, because I need to feed the belt through that in between this roller wheel and the drum. So I'm going to have to kind of manipulate that and lift it and stuff. So I'll try and do that on camera, and hopefully you'll be able to kind of see it as I'm doing. So this is my belt. Now I need the belt. What you'll see in the belt, you can see that. You can see these little grooves, and the other side is flat. So you need to make sure that these grooves are facing the drum. So it needs to be that way around. It needs to be the flat bit at the top. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to feed the belt down in between the drum and this plastic outer, and then I'm going to manipulate the belt so that it goes around the drum like that. So the only other extra bit I had to do from the start was just disconnect that, which is just that block and a connector, and then just unscrew the 6 screws at the top of this panel here right across the front, and then lift the whole thing up and pull it forward, and these 2 should separate. Now the challenge you have next is you've got to then get it all back into place and line it up, which means that this drum lip here needs to sit back in that groove there. So I need to manipulate that into place before I can then try and relocate the front panel. So let me have a go at doing that, and then I'll do the next bit. Right, okay, I've got it to line up, and the trick is that this front panel here, when you look at it on the inside here, has kind of slots and grooves which line up and kind of fit into this kind of piece here. So imagine this white panel here, it's actually two pieces. There's this lower piece here, and then there's a bit on the inside which is above it, which is, you can't quite see it, and all you're trying to do is you're trying to wiggle the front and back of the machine, sorry, front piece here and this top piece here. You're just trying to wiggle them until they kind of fall into place. I mean, that sounds like dead easy, but actually it does when you wiggle it backwards and forwards. And the trick for me was I put my hand in there as well and wiggled that around a bit, and then it just dropped into place on top of this bit. And now you'll see all the screws line up. So I'm just going to screw that back up, and then we'll do hopefully the bit around putting the band on the wheel and getting it all kind of put back together. Okay, so in the last bit of the video, I was telling you to screw these screws from this front panel back into the top of the front panel, which is correct, but it's in the incorrect order, because if you do that, you will fix the drum in place, and therefore you won't have the flexibility of getting the belt onto the wheel. So you're better off actually taking this front panel, keeping this front panel off, and actually just lifting the whole thing up, because you'll see when you put it back together again, it sits on this kind of ridge here and it fits into this hole. The two bits kind of dovetail to each other. So this is how you kind of align it all, and there's a kind of lug here that kind of the bit goes down onto, which kind of lines it all up. But if you do that, you won't have the room to get the belt onto the wheel. So leave this off, and if you can, actually just pick it up and pull it forward and just take the whole bit apart so that you've got plenty of room to move your drum. Then what we're going to do, so this is the spindle I was talking about, which with that cover on it you can't see any of it, and the fan, and this is the wheel. So you can see, hopefully, I was looking for my light. Where's my light? There it is. So if I get a bit of light in there, hopefully you can see that other screw. Now, if I were going to do this again, even if my belt hadn't snapped, I'd probably take the front off, I'd take this cover off, just because there is loads more room now to get at this part. So even if you haven't snapped your belt, it's worthwhile taking this fan cover off, the fan off, just to give you loads of room to do it. It takes a little bit longer, but it just saves you all the aggro of trying to do it in a tiny little space, because that's the reason I broke the belt in the first place, is through rage. So when you've replaced your wheel and you're going to put your belt on, what I did was I fed the belt around the wheel, around the wheel that way, and actually it didn't work because it's not quite tense enough. So the pulley wheel, the rubber band has to come this way from underneath and fit over the top of the pulley wheel here, and then that creates enough tension to lock tightly on the drum and spin the drum when it goes round. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to do that, and all I'm going to do is wiggle the drum and the pulley wheel and then just kind of wiggle it into place. So I'll see how I get on. Okay, so there we have the pulley wheel and the belt on the wheel. Now, I mean, you've got to need a good old amount of strength to do this, But what you're trying to do is you're trying to wedge something in sort of there and kind of sit it on top of here and pull that belt up. And the kind of way to do it is to try and pull the drum towards you and create as small a gap between the drum and this as possible. So you're trying to pull the drum down and trying to pull it towards you, almost so the drum and the belt kind of meet, to give you enough room to kind of prise the belt over. But you really want, in fact, if I were doing it again, I'd probably try and find some sort of clamp and slowly kind of raise this bar up, because the danger is, what you don't want to do is pull against this wheel, because it's cheap plastic and you'll snap the wheel. So that's the belt now on, and it sits kind of where those marks are. Now I've got to try and put the front back on and relocate the front pieces together, which I suspect will now be slightly harder because of the tension on the drum, but we'll have a go. Okay, well, that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. So what I found is, once I put the front on at kind of like an angle, there's actually quite a lot of movement in this. You can pick it up because the belt's actually more flexible than I thought. So I kind of pulled the drum up, and then I just aligned that bottom gap with the groove here. I just aligned those two and then pushed them together, and as it kind of went forward and fell into place, the bottom here just dropped on, and all the screws are actually already aligned, which is perfect. So I'll screw that all together, and then I'll kind of align the drum, because obviously that should be sat in the groove and on top of that wheel. So I think that will go quite easily, but we'll try it and then we'll see. Okay, so I've screwed the front back on, so all these 4 screws are back in place, which means that the top part of the front and the bottom part of the front are back together and aligned. Now what I need to do is I need to then connect up the rest of it. So I need to re-screw this back in with 2 screws, which go in there. On the other side, I need to reconnect those hoses, and then I need to reconnect this bar with a couple of screws and this block with the electrics. Okay, so I've screwed these 2 in, which fixes that bar in place. I've connected up the earth and this, so I just need to screw these on, so I'll do that. Okay, so I've now got this bit back in place. So I have put the screws in, I've reconnected the hoses, so this is all now secure again. So that's all moving nicely. So I've now got to put the fan back on. So what you can see here is I've given the fan a nice good clean out to make it much better. It's a lot better than it was. So we just pop that back in place and give it a good push until it kind of stops and locks in place. And then we need to fit this spring clip again, so I'll need to squeeze that on, and then that will go on here onto that spindle to hold it in place. And it just holds it in place, so I'll need the pliers, so I'll do that with 2 hands. So back in a moment. So we'll remember this bit here just slots into this groove like that. Now this goes on. So with a bit of wiggling, so the important thing is to get this clip on this side, and also when you look at it down this side, there shouldn't be any gap around here, so this should be nice and tight. And then it just kind of locks in place there. You just push it down and make sure those little lugs sit underneath this, and then that's kind of in place. And then remember where we took out the wiring, we just need to pop this wiring back inside these clips here. So again, just remember when you screw these in to not over tighten them. It's blurry, apologies for that. And get it to focus on the right thing. There you go. Just don't over tighten them because they're in plastic, and if you over tighten them you'll strip the screw thread. So that's this fixed in place. Come on, focus, that's it. That's this fixed in place. So now I should just be able to feed the wires back into this kind of plastic thing. So the bigger, thicker wires that are at the bottom, I'll just pop those in first. Right, so I've kind of stuck the wires in there. I haven't pulled on these too much because there's not a lot of give in these, and I don't want to pull them off. So we should be all good to start putting the sides and the back on, I think. So I'll work on that bit next. This side on already. So what we need to do is we needed to remember to locate the side correctly, and I'll show you that in a second. Then you'll have a screw to fit on here, which holds it in the front, and then you'll have 4 screws which run down the back. There are more than 4 holes in the back, so just you'll need to just make sure you get the right ones, because the other holes that are there, if you put the screw into it, it should just sit in and it won't screw into anything, so you'll know it's the wrong hole. So just make sure you locate the right kind of holes. So then I'll go and get this side of the panel, and we'll put that one on, show you how to locate it, and go from there. Right, so I've got the side there. What you will see here, which I've already shown I think in a previous earlier bit of the video, is you need to locate the side down onto here and then slide it in this direction so that it sits underneath those, which will then allow you to slide it underneath here, and the screw holes will line up ready for you to screw it all in. So let me see if I can do it one-handed. So 4 screws are in. Okay, so the side is now on. So I've just got to now put the top panel on, which is just a couple of screws. So just remember to sit your panel kind of on top of your machine like that. Offer it up to the front. Okay, would help if I have the panel the right way around. Okay, so offer it up to the front because you're going to need to locate that little lip that's on the front underneath the front of the machine. So what I want to do is kind of get it in like that. So you can't slide it in, it needs to be kind of hooked underneath. And then you kind of lower the panel down, keep applying a little bit of pressure towards the front to try and keep this bit locked in underneath. And if it doesn't, like mine doesn't, you need two hands. So I shall just do mine with two hands. So I've done it. So all I needed to do, the reason I needed two hands was I needed to hold this way while I pushed from this way to kind of force it to kind of, not force it, but kind of allow this gap to stay closed. And then all that happens is this drops down on top. And then there's two screws to fix this back together again. Right, so both of those screws are now in, the top is now on, and what you will see is there are no screws left, which is always a really good sign, because if there's screws left it means you've done something wrong. So then all I need to do now is slide the washing machine, tumble dryer rather, back in to its place, and then just try and plug it in to see if it works. So I'll do that bit next. I pushed it back in, stuck a towel in, it's all screwed back together, plugged it in. So let us see whether it works. So just turn it down to a quick cycle. Yay! It works. Okay.